Hey Miranda, it's Saturday, April 18th. Today I'm going to tell you about Hypatia of Alexandria. She is one of my favorite historical figures, if not my actual favorite. I first learned about Hypatia when I was taking multivariable calculus. Our first assignment was to write like a 5-page biography on a mathematician, and I was one of, I think, 3 girls in the class of about 50 people. So I was like, I gotta represent, but then I realized I had never been taught about a single female mathematician. Anyway, the coolest one I came across was Hypatia, and now I just love her. I had like 3 books on her that I checked out from the library, and even though I didn't need to write my paper, I ended up reading them all cover to cover, which I've never done with any biography of anyone ever. So, Hypatia lived in Alexandria in the 4th and 5th centuries AD, and this was while Egypt was under the rule of Christian Rome. That will become important later. Her father was this guy named Theon, who was a philosopher and a mathematician, and he tried to create in his daughter basically the perfect human being. He did not succeed in creating the perfect human being, but you know, he did a pretty good job. This lady was amazing. She did everything. She was the foremost mathematician of her time, and please note that I did not say the foremost female mathematician of her time. She was the foremost mathematician. That's a big freaking deal. I'd love to be able to say that that's a normal thing now and just a big deal back then, but the fact is, even now, if the world's foremost mathematician was a female and got attention for it, it would be a big freaking deal. Anyway, she produced a ton of mathematical writings, most of which were lost when the Library of Alexandria burned. But her writings on math would remain the most significant steps forward in mathematics for the next 100 years after she died. Some of her stuff that survived the fire included work on conic sections and commentaries on Apollonius's work with conic sections, commentaries on Ptolemy's Alchemist, commentaries on Euclid's Elements. For those of you who didn't take math history, those are really important mathematical writings. Commentaries on the works of Diophantus, particularly his work with indeterminate probability and astronomy. Unfortunately, we do not have any of her own work today. The only stuff that we have of hers is stuff that she collaborated on with her father. Now, I've probably started to lose some of you, so we're going to steer away from the history of mathematical discourse and talk about how she was also awesome at everything else. She invented the astrolabe, she invented the planisphere, she invented a device for distilling water, and a lot of people claim that she invented the hydroscope, which measures the specific gravity of water, but she didn't. She just built some of them, but it was already invented. She was also a philosopher, a teacher, a rhetorician, a musician. Fun fact, at the time, music was considered a branch of mathematics, an editor, and an artist. She also kept a really regimented diet and exercise routine, which included calisthenics, horseback riding, climbing, rowing, so she was probably pretty buff too. Now, because she was so awesome at everything, she was also super famous and popular. She taught at the Alexandrian University, and she was really popular to the extent that not only her lecture hall, but also her home were like constantly crowded with pupils and visiting scholars and stuff, trying to ask her questions or collaborate with her or get her to date them or whatever. She was so well known that any messages that were addressed to the lady philosopher or just the muse were just automatically sent to her. She was also reportedly quite a babe. She was known to be like mesmerizingly beautiful, but she never married because she claimed to be, and this is a quote, wedded to the truth. There are a lot of people who claimed that they had romantic affairs with her, but in all likelihood, all of them were false, because most other reports talked about her as being fastidiously celibate. Ready for a great story? So this one time, she was getting harassed by this admirer, and she couldn't get him to leave her alone, so she threw her used menstrual rag at him to get him to stop following her around. This is also actually the first time that the use of menstrual rags appears in recorded history. But as seems to usually be the case whenever someone is particularly awesome, she was murdered before her time. And this one is pretty gruesome, so buckle up if you're squeamish. You may not want to hear this. Hypatia belonged to the school of thought called neo-platonic, which among its many philosophies included the belief that religious establishments were fallacious and that they were restrictive to rational thought. And this, of course, ticked a lot of people off, especially in a Roman Christian-ruled Alexandria. So there was this dude named Cyril, who was the patriarch of Alexandria, and he saw people with those beliefs as a threat to him and to the church. So he made a habit of pursuing heretics and then having them brutally killed. Now, he also had this political enemy named Orestes, who was the Roman prefect in Egypt. And he just happened to be one of Hypatia's BFFs. So Cyril decides to kill two birds with one stone. Or more accurately, he decides to kill one mathematician with one of any evil, power-hungry dude's favorite tools, an angry mob. This political clash between Cyril and Orestes had caused a lot of problems for people, so Cyril was like, hey, guess what? It's totally Hypatia's fault that Orestes, won't agree with me on anything. And she's also a dangerous heretic. So then one night, this group of people pulled her out of her coach and dragged her to the Caesareum church. Yep, they murdered her at a church, where they then proceeded to beat her to death with roofing tiles and bricks, use roofing tiles and oyster shells to carve the flesh from her bones, and then eventually tore her corpse to pieces and burned the pieces in an off-site public area called Cineron. And there are a lot of different varying accounts about the details of her death, but that's the basic general idea of what happened. Yeah. So, to recap, Hypatia was an awesome female mathematician. She was super popular and did a lot of really cool stuff, and she was married to her work, but she had some opinions that other people didn't agree with, so they brutally murdered her in public. Now you know a little bit more about the history of mathematics than you did yesterday. You're welcome. Miranda, I will see you tomorrow. P.S. Hey Mom, remember these barrettes? Yeah, I totally still wear them.